There isn't a durable peace treaty that could be created between Ukraine and Vladimir Putin that would last. And so actually there is no alternative but to slog on with this and to support the Ukrainians with whatever it takes for them to be able to preserve a functioning country.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg announced plans to increase the alliance's rapid deployment forces from 40,000 to 300,000. That's a seven-fold rise. What difference might that make, William Hague?
Well, the purpose of that kind of change is to partly to have a more forward defense of NATO. Countries like Estonia have understandably raised their concern that there have been very few NATO troops actually positioned on the eastern borders of NATO for many years. And NATO, on the assumption that a Russian military attack would be pretty unlikely, has had a plan, or so it is argued, to recapture such countries later, after 6 months, after a Russian invasion. Estonia would be wiped from the map in the meantime. So part of this is to have a more forward defense, to be able to assure people in countries like the Baltic states that there's an immediate defense, that there are NATO troops actually in those countries in sufficient strength that they would be able to put up a fight. That's the kind of change of military doctrine that is having to take place in the light of the invasion of Ukraine.
In regards to, I know we're talking about Russia and China, but in regards to the threat from Russia, which we're all very exercised by right now, William, you've written a piece in the Times today, your column in the Times today, about the kind of lack of, slightly waning appetite perhaps for supporting Ukraine long term from some countries, for example, like France.
Well, I think the G7 leaders are doing a good job of rallying together. And that's good to see at the summit that they've just had. But I'm really struck, I'm writing in my column about how underlying that, if you actually do surveys in countries, and there was one 2 weeks ago, you find that in many countries like Italy or France and Germany, really large proportions of people would say, well, we'd rather make concessions to Russia and get peace that way than fight on for justice for Ukraine. And I'm really pointing out that, well, while one can argue the merits of that, peace is not available with Putin. There isn't a durable peace treaty that could be created between Ukraine and Vladimir Putin that would last. And so actually there is no alternative but to slog on with this and to support the Ukrainians with whatever it takes for them to be able to preserve a functioning country.
And Stephanie, you've got an exclusive interview in your paper with Liz Truss, Foreign Secretary. What does she say in that about slogging on or finding some elusive peace deal?
Yeah, this is exactly what we focused on in this interview, which is I think there is a kind of split already in the West. Of course, everybody is emphasizing the unity, but you only have to look at, in my country, in Germany, at the polls, and you have around half of the population saying it's better to have a peace deal. People, I mean, it's difficult to understand. I personally, obviously, do not share this opinion, but they are saying, oh, we must stop the slaughtering of people, of children. We must also make sure that the grain goes out of Ukraine. So let's talk to Putin. But Putin is taking the world at ransom, and that's very much what the Foreign Secretary also emphasized in that interview. And I think now it's summer. We're going into the autumn. Germany already is really scrambling and struggling to make sure there is enough energy supplies in the autumn. So what does the German government tell the population in the autumn? Why they have, pay so much money for the energy. Second, they might not even have the energy they need. And at the same time, putting all this money into helping Ukraine.
So does that mean that implicit in that the Germans who think that, and that's obviously not all of them, but the ones that do think that that Ukraine should give up some land permanently to Russia?
Yes, there is people who are saying this in Germany. Obviously, the government does not. Just to be clear, the German government is absolutely determined to supply weapons to help Ukraine. But I mean, and of course, there's all these reports of how much weapons, who does really supply how many weapons, and so on. At the end of the day, the question is, how long will this go on? Because you have to be honest to people and say this might go on for years. This is not going to end this year, neither next year.